We are live. This is the market update. This is the sovereign ineptitude by crypto market update. I'm your host, Bill Noble. So what do we got today? We got the Fed. We got the absurd AI bubble. We have this geopolitical situation, which is seems like it gets worse every day. It's hard to even see a positive outcome. I mean, I know in research you get paid for imagination, but, you know, they're going to line up all this military equipment and stare at the other side. I guess that's not unprecedented, but it's a powder keg. It's definitely a powder keg for stonks. You know, oil has a creeping bid to it. Oil feels like Bitcoin back in the day, you know, just this little black rock grinding bid. You get $100 oil, as I've said, you're going to have some interesting things. Meanwhile, back at the Arrow Ranch, oh my God, someone's coming into ETH DeFi, or there's going to be a listing, or something's going to happen. But it is amazing that as soon as the geopolitical thing, as soon as there's like, you know, headlines calm down, alts pop 5 to 10%. Now, of course, it's a range, so a lot of times they go back down, going with our thesis that it doesn't pay to buy strength or sell weakness. It's a market for, frankly, intraday traders. That said, the news is mind-boggling. And if they give you a chance to buy this market, I don't know if that's today, I don't know if that's next week, I don't know. They're talking about a big decision over the weekend when everybody, you know, all the aircraft carriers arrive. They give you a shot to buy crypto. That's your shot. Now, in the meantime, if you need to raise capital, anybody who bought this Circle IPO, I think before yesterday's rally, the stock trades for a price earnings ratio of 1,700 PE. Tesla is considered insane at 188. So feel free to sell your Circle and spread that between XRP and MicroStrategy or your friendly neighborhood Bitcoin miner, not investment advice, since stablecoins, AKA parking lots for treasuries, okay, and the flood of crypto, that's the flood of money that's coming to crypto is mind-boggling. You probably need a 10% dip in Bitcoin. I'm sorry, a 10% dip in equities just to get 100K Bitcoin, and you may get such a dip. I think being patient pays, I think. Okay, let's welcome who's here. Let's go. We have SG, the original, first on the stream. We have Ben, Yav, Miguel. What's happening? Lee, we'll check out Pengu. Thomas, find out now 7. Find out now. Warmon, blown ideas. Tyler Hall, Side Hill, Leo. What's going on? Arendam is here. The few, the proud. Okay. News. Actually, let's do Pengu. Let's get wild. Start with altcoins. Whoops. Okay. Think with a lot of these altcoins, antivirus is in kind of the same boat. Think anything that's holding the 62% retracement may wind up being okay. I mean, this geopolitical volatility. I mean, everyone's expecting volatility. So that means you may get complete silence before you get volatility. I don't have a problem with this. I'm okay with this, especially if they flush it out. But then again, some of these things are already so flushed out. Like the risk and reward in this stuff, I don't know. Feels pretty good to me. 62% obviously has to hold. And, you have to be mindful of this. You know what I'm saying? That's normally what they do. That's what they did to Ski Mask Dog. They did it to antivirus. That is the program. Okay, so how do you know Powell screwed up by not cutting rates? Because what these tech companies have been doing is they use the fact that the Fed is not cutting rates as an opportunity to just do massive layoffs. Massive. And of course, it gets blamed on the Fed. The optics, the orange man looks at it and go, oh yeah, that's the Fed. It's not Microsoft. Okay, so in reality, Just Dario notes, hold on a second, aren't salespeople usually cut when a company is struggling to sell its products? So another public service announcement. 1, Microsoft is not an AI company. 2, they're entangled with OpenAI, which is a bottomless pit of money, right? They're not profitable. Okay, there's a lot of tension there. And, these guys realize that the only way they're going to be able to maintain the stock where it is to just let massive amounts of people go. They're basically unloading their whole sales force, and most likely prospecting on LinkedIn will be AI agents. Now, the way I'm looking at this, I'm not looking at this, oh my God, AI is taking everyone's job. I don't think that's it at all. I just think the insane FOMO about AI, they're either getting more money for more insane FOMO or it just caught up with them. It's not an AI company. They have a relationship with OpenAI. It's not AI. So they got to fire 8,000 people, right? And this has been going on all across tech, right? It's a giant bubble, $100 million pay packages for scientists. Every time you turn around, somebody's spending $20 billion on a data center. I don't know that it's going to stop, but I know that all the world's investment capital is in this. This is where it is. They're like, I don't know, they're like roaches that walk into a trap. All the roaches are trapped in equities. Meanwhile, crypto just sits, waiting as all the world's printed money comes to crypto through stablecoins. 2 new studies estimate that we're seeing 5 to 10 people leaving voluntarily for every formal exit. That's a lot of people leaving in 4 months. You cut off the money and everyone leaves. So I continue to believe that this is the actual battle that's going to get fought. This geopolitical thing, as grim as it looks, could be a part of a larger giant distraction, right? I mean, there was propaganda out yesterday where they picked up a bunch of people in Nebraska, and it turned out that, American citizens were in the waiting room of the company filling out job applications, trying to get a job. And that's probably somewhat believable because everyone's got to have 2 jobs, right? There was a labor shortage in 2020 and 2021, and that got solved real quick because everyone had to get 2 jobs. So this is actually the real battle, because if you don't win this battle, you don't have a country. Meanwhile, though, all the attention is elsewhere. I mean, I swear to God, if it wasn't so scary, it would be a circus. Unconditional surrender. Okay, well, I'm sure young people in Iran might like that. But, anybody who's patriotic or the hardcore element is not going to be doing that, particularly with some hostile regime raining fire down on you. I mean, if somebody was attacking your home, what would you do? Would you fight? All right, so the latest greatest from the propaganda machines. So here we have the Iranians who, they can't control their airspace. They've lost complete control of their airspace, but they know exactly where the hospital is in whatever neighborhood this is in Israel. Okay. So here we have a hospital or a building. We have a couple guys, I don't know, a couple of construction workers now wearing doctor's outfits. I don't know. Can you really trust anything? What are you going to do? Ask Rock, is this real? Yeah, it's a real picture of 8 guys standing around a blown up building. I mean, all war is about deception, and the first casualty of war is the truth. I'm not saying this did or did not happen. It's unfortunate either way. There were people in those buildings, most likely. Right? It's like every time, every single thing, like, I would appreciate it if you watch the show, but every time I saw something on this show related to this, it just screams Bitcoin. And the only risk to Bitcoin and crypto, frankly, is equities and risk assets in general, if there's some kind of freak out trade. Okay, so here's Doomberg, right? Now we're taking it like, we're taking the whole Trump thing, like, going crazy. We'll go into the whole Ted Cruz thing. This defines his presidency. What he does here determines everything. It's the most important thing ever. It's every time George Bush talked back in the day, this is the most important speech of his life. This is how the orange man could have everybody buy. It could be fooling everybody, right? He's moving all this equipment around and then he's going to cut a deal. Now that doesn't feel likely given the rhetoric. As one geopolitical commentator said, this is pre-programmed, in one guy's words, that, the Iranians were going to get attacked. Okay. Trump weighs joining the strikes, and the new anti-Trump right is one-upping themselves. One guy thinks, he's like, hey, bookmark this tweet. We're going in with ground forces. I mean, they are taking this. They are taking that. I don't know. They're taking it where they need to go with it. Okay, so here's Bernie, and this is something I discussed, that the American far left and the American far right would get together, and that's exactly what happens. Bernie is like, the guy from Israel is not the president of the United States, and he should not be telling us what to do. Yeah, well, guess what, Bernie? He is. He is. And so is any of these associated lobbies. I mean, some Republican congressman, some guy who's like kind of independent from Kentucky tried to start a bill or a resolution saying we can't go fight over there because you're supposed to have congressional authorization. Want to know how many Republicans went with him? I don't know how anybody went with them. 0. Nobody wants to cross these guys. Now, this circus, I want to put a bag over my head. This is a senator. This is Tucker Carlson. His dad was intelligence. This is Ted Cruz, a senator from Texas, who is very intelligent but completely unlikable. The only reason anyone in Texas votes for him is because it's the not the left vote. So Ted gets on with Tucker. Tucker's pretty wound up about this. Tucker's speaking out against it on one hand and calling the orange man on the phone to apologize on the other, so they say. And Cruz just gets on this thing, and I don't know what he's doing. He's like, saying that there's, biblical reasons why, we have to continue to, go along with whatever Israel wants to do. Tucker Carlson and him went back and forth. Really interesting television. Tucker's like, do you know how many people live in Iran? And again, more World Wrestling Federation, right? It's wrestling. It's a show, right? And this guy with his cowboy boots, it's like, dude, let me tell you about this guy. Want to hear something about this guy? So Texas is famous for ice storms, right? The northern part has snow. In Texas, what happens is it rains and then it freezes. And one time we had something that was borderline catastrophic. Everything was closed for 3 days. Unless you were a prepper, literally, you might not have had water. Never mind heat and food. You want to know what this guy did? The day before the storm, he gets on a plane and goes to the tropics for vacation. So people in Texas are like out. Literally, I saw a guy out trying to get a stick off the ground to burn for heat. And this guy's in the tropics. Okay. The word is unlikable. So they go on and they have this huge brouhaha about how, Cruz is an idiot and they're using the Bible to justify this. They really are. They are. Like they're pulling out all the stops. Look at this. Terrifying, you know what? Hershey Kiss. The religious fanaticism. The decisions on your shoulders I would not want. Okay, but there is only one voice that matters, and that's the voice of the Almighty. And, the Almighty wants you to fight. That's the U.S. ambassador to Israel, who is a minister. It's like, okay, wow. Pulling out all the stops. Here's the orange man saying, yeah, he speaks to Bibi every day, calls him a good guy, and tells him to keep going, like he's talking to his son who's, trying out for football in college or something. What? You got to be kidding me with this. I mean, literally, it's like, you see all these ships and all this stuff moving around and all this stuff exploding, and you're like, oh my God, this is the end of the world. And these characters open their mouth, and it's like, wait a minute, this is like wrestling, right? I used to watch this when I was a kid. You'd wake up and you'd watch like Justice League, and then you'd watch wrestling while you ate your pancakes. That's what this is. What is this? Right? I mean, guys are getting on and saying, this doesn't make any sense. And again, this is like a real intelligence service with like literally the smartest guy in the whole world. Okay. Like the Chinese just landed. Okay. Chinese cargo plane just landed. Most likely, my read on this is that those are air defenses for the oil fields. Because, there seems to be something missing here that, the Chinese get all their oil from the Iranians. So I don't know if we're supplying that. I don't know how that works. But whatever's in that plane is undoubtedly for oil fields. It's got to be. Right. And this guy also says, it's pre-programmed that something like this happens, meaning shooting. All right. One commentator is saying, be careful. You're falling into the same trap as every other president. And only 16% of Americans want it. 19% of Trump voters want it. It's like, dude. All these people who are talking about, Trump acting like a king or a dictator. I mean, this is either the biggest misdirection in history. Like there was a misdirection where we tricked the Germans going into Normandy. Like the Germans thought like these inflatable objects was actually our army. We put our best general on the bench because the Germans were supposed to think that that was the real army. That was the invasion target. And the actual invasion occurred somewhere else. So, I mean, basically, if this is the biggest fake out in history, eventually you're going to have the biggest rally in history. I don't know if that's tomorrow. Probably not. Right? Like, in stonks, who's going to go home long? Right? Microsoft is admitting there's a problem, and you got this that could go off on Sunday. But again, this is a commercial for crypto. These are the people running the free world. I don't think so. You know who's running the free world? Whoever mines the next Bitcoin block. Okay. So, this is the guy from Kentucky, right? Most Americans do not support this. Why doesn't more of Congress oppose it? Yeah, Congress is supposed to represent the people, but that hasn't been true. I don't know how long. Right? Congress is bought and paid for. Why do you think when the orange man came into office, everything was in executive order? Why do you think they want to do the big, beautiful bill? They only want to deal with Congress once. They did stable coins because Besson told them we can't finance the debt without it. So it's like, okay, if it means more sugar, we can do stable coins. He only wants to deal with Congress once because he can't get anything done. It's unbelievable. I mean, is this not the case?
Like we're talking. I saw one guy. I commented on his tweets. Like he's like, I've never seen the asymmetric upside. It's like, you got 3X's and 5X's, and you have 10X's and 20X's, most likely at the peak of like any future mania. The whole arrow is telling you this, right? Base ecosystem moved the first time, right? 23, 24, right? Base took off way in advance. Now it's kind of arrow by itself, but again, DeFi, right? Big players are coming. Okay, the Iranians say all options are on the table. Now, here's what I really can't believe. I absolutely cannot believe that they hacked these guys, right? Crypto was how they were paying for things, but they hacked an exchange. Like, why would you start cyber with these guys? Because these guys are cyber capable. They're cyber capable. And Tulsi, right? Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, took a visit to Japan to see Hiroshima, where you get to see what happens when a nuke goes off. Now, I think this is, well, when I watch the video, the purpose of the video is to basically explain that we never want to get in a situation. I think she was talking about Eastern Europe, where a nuke actually goes off. So it could be propaganda on one hand or protest on another. I would actually vote for protest. Vote for protest. People are trying to get out of the dollar to such a degree that the Swiss National Bank has lowered rates to zero. Please stop buying Swiss francs. Please stop it. Stop it. Dollar Schwitz, right? They want the Swiss franc. They can't get enough. Rates are at zero in Switzerland. They're going to go negative. Please get this away from me, right? If you want me to hold your money, I'm going to charge you. Okay, so the Circle IPO. Circle IPO'd at 30. BlackRock and a bunch of guys bought a chunk. And yesterday on the stablecoin bill, retail was FOMOing in at 200. And yeah, the PE is 1,700. And that is not what you want to own, right? That is, you want to exit stage left, right? Buy XRP. And it's done. I mean, that's crazy banana pants, right? If Circle is worth that much, you got to be getting involved in XRP, Salana, and Ethereum, which is where all the stablecoin trading is going to be, for God's sakes. Or even a Bitcoin layer 2. And, right? All right. So the big question is, who is selling Bitcoin above 100? Who's the seller? You know what? It could be the Chinese. And guess what? It could also be the Iranians, because they have an intelligence service too, and they're not stupid, right? I mean, everyone's like, oh, yeah, the Iranians are stupid. Well, no, let's not assume they're stupid, okay? So, they've had a significant Bitcoin mining, right? They were the number 5 miner at the peak, and they were around 3% in 2024. So this makes sense why they would want to hack the exchange. So these guys have a harder time getting out, or they would be more visible, which is why I think Monero spiked, and Bitcoin Cash has a weird bid, right? Somebody's moving crypto around. It could be these guys. Their annual revenue from this was 700 to $1 billion. It's unbelievable, right? And then another guy I know is like, you better get secure fast, because North Korea is trying to hack anybody who's on the map. If you're on the map, they're trying to hack you. It's incredible. But now, of course, that dents the ecosystem. That makes people afraid, which means you should buy, right? Like if there's some big hack, and that's what flushes the market down. Because you know what? Like I said, if you were Iranian, would you push back? And you can't even discount some kind of false flag that gets blamed on one of these parties. You know, like if there's a hack, how do you know where it actually comes from? And that even goes for like blowing up buildings at this point. I mean, when everyone's shooting at each other, okay, but it's like, okay, here's a one-off, boom, take a picture. Here's a one-off, boom, take a picture. How do you know who's doing that? You don't. You don't. So, you know, rent in the draw or groceries in the draw, cash, right? Crypto, you know, some hot, some cold. They recovered a necklace from the Titanic. The reason that this is in the deck is because sometimes I feel like this is the legacy AI machine, right? It's, you know, it's consensus that Skynet will take everyone's job. You know, but Microsoft lays off 8,000 people because we're going to replace them all with a computer. Well, maybe you can replace some, but I don't think an AI agent's going to take anyone out to dinner to close a deal yet. I think they're panicking. I think they're absolutely panicking. And as one guy I know in equity said, you know, equities have gone, S&P has gone to 6,000 twice. You got a second chance to get out. It's the biggest risk in the market. Commerce Secretary Lutnik says 70,000 people have signed up for the $5 million gold card. That's $350 billion. Well, good for them. What Mr. Lutnik is not telling you is that a lot of the Orange Man tariff pauses expire soon. So, you know, you have a geopolitical situation. You have an AI bubble-ish thing going on, maybe. And the tariffs are going to hit again. It's great. Happy for the stock guys. Okay. Framework to bring stocks, bonds, and futures on Solana, right? Everything's going to trade on Solana and ETH. Everything, right? You know, they may have to go to SUI and NEAR, and the machines may go to something like Injective. This is going to happen. People are too busy looking at Circle, great trade, but that's not the stablecoin trade long term. That's just like, you know, CNBC. The actual stablecoin trade is any dip you can get, and you may not get one. You may not. I mean, I kind of think you will, because I think equities are delusional, but if I was long crypto, I would definitely not be getting out anything. I'm not selling anything into weakness. Okay, so the internet in Iran broke. How nice. G7 trying to get critical minerals from somewhere else. Don't doubt that all this pressure on the Iranians is a way of pressuring China. It's like, you give us the minerals we want, or you give us what we want, or you let us balance the trade or whatever, and we won't blow up your oil supply. How nice, right? What other explanation could there possibly be for doing something, right, that 19% of the population approves of? Right? U.S. is reopening foreign visas to China. Okay, so we have to vet everybody to make sure that they support Israel. So we're not worried about communists or anything like that. We just have to make sure that they fall in line with the, with the lobby. Because after all, this was about the short. Everyone thought I was crazy when I said the shutdown of TikTok was because that was young people being pro-Palestinian. Shut off, or threatens to shut off. Unanimous vote through Congress. Oh my God, the Chinese communists are on your phone. Yeah, they've been there for 8 years. You know what I'm saying? And Silicon Valley is what? They're selling the data to the Chinese. It's ridiculous, right? It's so obvious. It's hard to believe people are actually kind of falling for this at this point. Meanwhile, back at the debt ranch, crypto is not a threat to the dollar. In fact, stable coins can reinforce dollar supremacy. They have been ignored by the national government for way too long. Right. Exactly. Right. You can't borrow 37T and have to take that up to 50 without a bid for the debt. It's as simple as that. Fear greed at 52. Whew. Man, give me something in the 30s. Bring it to daddy. You know what I'm saying? Just bring it right to me. Because, man, when this is over, the ineptitude, the unintended consequences, ask Perplexity about, tell me about how unintended consequences is taught in a college economics class. Let's see what you get. So Uncle Jerome says the economy is in a solid position. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's fine because they're building data centers, but the labor market is terrible. The only people who are the only job creation has to do with like old people, hospitality and leisure, medical. Everywhere else, there is zero job growth. Zero. Right? No, it's like the way I would say it. One guy said it. No one wants to hire anybody. That's just, it's like a sentiment thing. Coinbase to allow stable coins to be used as collateral. Bitcoin gets Fed rate pause tailwind. I don't know, man. You know, the Fed is nothing more than a protest against the orange man. Rates are way too high. They never stopped inflation. And the labor market is going to break. You know, it doesn't, let's put it this way. It doesn't take much to break the labor market. You know, like one guy I know who's very smart, he's calling it the silent recession. It's not a recession in economic output because Silicon Valley is spending all the money in the world to chase Skynet. But what's happening at the individual level is a totally different story, right? Which is why, even though it's ironic, you know, dude, if you got a job, you got to get spare change into crypto somehow. And if you want to get out of that job one day and you got money, then you got to shoot your shot. You got to pick your coin and you got to stay in, right? Timing the market is important. Time in the market is just as important. Look at Arrow, right? Arrow goes to 20 cents, $2, 20 cents. And then now it's mysteriously up only, right? You got to, if you believe in it, you got to hold on. Now, if it's a bad trade and it's dead, okay, you move on. But being invested psychologically and financially can benefit you, right? Bitcoin DeFi projects debuts Bitcoin stablecoin. You know, one of these things they're going to do on Bitcoin, they're going to do something on a layer 2, and that's just going to ignite the whole thing. Matter of fact, I think if Bitcoin goes parabolic, it's going to not be just because it's money, because people want it the way they might want something like ETH. If that ever happens, forget it. All right, so we have Bitcoin going to $1 million this year. That's probably a recipe for a range. Salana Treasury with 420,000 Solana files for an IPO. So, you know, people are getting hip to this thing. You're going to have IPOs out the wazoo. And then after you have IPOs, you're going to have mergers and acquisitions. And you may have mergers and acquisitions before everyone IPOs. Because now it's a race, right? Everyone wants the value of their company to go much higher, right? You put the stock out there. You have Schwabies levitate the stock. Then all of a sudden, I don't know, you're raising money at higher and higher and higher valuations. I don't know what the valuation of Circle is, but it's a lot bigger than the $5 billion that Ripple offered to pay. 3 XRP ETFs start trading. No one cares. It's unbelievable. No one cares. Shocking, right? Shocking. Okay, so Solana watching paint dry on support. ETH watching paint dry on support, right? S&P watching paint dry at resistance. See these gaps? They're going to get filled. That's what I think. This is tariff hysteria. This is the whole world's oil supply, being threatened. I mean, it doesn't have to be like this is Brent. Most of the time, what I'm showing you is crude CL. That's West Texas Intermediate. So oil, like natural gas, has different prices depending on the delivery point. So West Texas Intermediate, WTI, that's the American version. Brent, which is probably the world, like the global standard for oil. What do we got? Well, let's see. We got we did a little orange man give up trade here. And now it's back above that. Luxalgo supporting underneath. And, this could go to 82. And I think if that happened, you would have people get really upset. And I'm sure there's people in equities. This is zero predictive value here. I'm sure there's people in equities who are going to go home and they'll be like, what happens if we walk in and oil's at 80? I mean, it's not the end of the world. Oil was at 80 when the orange man got sworn in, right? So it's not like a disaster or anything, but, oil has not been able, the Brent has not been able to sustain itself above the 200-day moving average, right? That is what this is, right? Yeah. 200-day exponential moving average. Every time oil comes up here, oil goes down, right? Hang out, down, right? They did the big push here. Hang out, down. Hang out, whoop. Hang out, down. Okay, well, I'm not trying to be a split hairs here, but what happens if it holds above the 200-day moving average? Uncertainty can be toxic. Now, of course, that probably means low liquidity. Everyone's sitting around staring at themselves. No one knows what to do, which is why I don't want anybody to get bearish, even if it slumps or even if there's a problem with equities, because that's what starts to happen, right? CoinDesk, Cointelegraph, they got to wrap a narrative around whatever's happening, right? So if it's not going up, people all of a sudden get bearish. And then when it dips, everyone gets afraid. Because I think the next dip is, the last dip before some kind of blow off top happens and alt season starts. But that's just me. Okay, people, that's the market update for today. We will see you tomorrow.